What's up, everybody? It's the Roundtable Sports Podcast. My name is Taylor McLean. Excited to finally get the podcast this week. We've had some terrible internet issues at the house for the last couple of days, which has really hurt my feelings on a football Monday and Tuesday. But luckily, the trade deadline was this week, so now I can incorporate that information into the podcast. Looking forward to doing so. I've watched most of the games to this point, and a lot of the games I was planning to podcast about have trade implications for their teams as well. So now we'll get to fold all that information into the podcast and the like. So at least, disaster on one end is going to allow us for a different type of podcast today. The other thing we're super excited about is to announce our partnership with Evergreen Power Solutions. They are the newest sponsor to the Roundtable Sports Podcast, so you'll be hearing about them. I'll give you the big overview, and then we'll have kind of shorter commercials for that going forward. But I'm super excited to have the partnership with them. I've been doing this pretty much for the love of the game up until this point, and I'm glad to do it. And it's a vanity project for me, no doubt, and the like, but it's something that I really am passionate about and enjoy. And to have somebody else back you up a little bit and get behind you certainly fills you with confidence and pride in something that at a time where I kind of needed that. We're going on 3 years now, and doing something for no pay and actual expense for that long. Definitely, you got to be passionate about what you're doing. So here we are now, Evergreen Power Solutions. They are a concierge power company. You make the call, have your power bill handy. They go in, see what you're paying, what you could be paying, and what they can do for you right now. So try to save you money in the short term, and then long term, if you do sign up, they'll go back in and renegotiate your rates every 9 to 12 months. That way, you're not letting the contract run out. You're not paying variable rates at any time, and then you're not going above what you sign up for as far as your rates go either. So it's an easy way for someone that is not thinking about it at all, like yours truly, to save money. I would always not be paying attention to my contract, and then I would end up paying variable rates in the long term. Now I'm going to either be staying the same at a time where energy could definitely go up, and if it doesn't, my energy bill will go down. So exciting thing that I don't have to hawk some sort of pyramid scheme to get what I want and being paid for this podcast. It's actually a great company. I've gotten to know some of the workers personally and can vouch for them as a person. So exciting stuff for me, exciting stuff for everybody. So give them a call for me, 214-444-9816. Once again, 214-444-9816. Tell them that Taylor McLean sent you. Tell them you heard it on the Roundtable Podcasts. That information will let them know that they need to give me credit for that call. Show them that I've got some juice. Give them a call for me and see if they can save you some money, because that would be good for everybody, right? I'm so happy to be able to pitch a win-win and not have to sell my soul to the devil to get this done. But super exciting times. Let's start talking about some actual football. I could go on about my excitement till the cows come home, but let's get into what we're all interested in and what happened yesterday. Number one, a lot of moves. Have to say, it seems like the Rams and their success with trading picks and getting to the Super Bowl may have loosened up everybody's purse strings as far as these trades go. Maybe seeing that Deshaun Watson got three first-round picks. I don't know. It just seemed like everything was a little bit more fast and loose yesterday. We had some more minor stuff, like Nyheim Hines got traded for Zach Moss and a conditional 6th-round pick. So kind of a change of roles there. I don't think that moves the needle a ton, even though I like that for both teams. That was kind of the last move that kind of trickled in at the last second, but I do like that for Buffalo. I thought that James Cook could be that Nyheim Hines type guy, and he probably can be later on, but to have a pass catcher out of the backfield for the Buffalo Bills makes a ton of sense, and Nyheim Hines just kind of allows them to do some things that Zach Moss just can't at this point. And Devin Singletary can emulate enough of those Zach Moss things where I don't think it's a big loss at all. And it gives Zach Moss kind of a new lease on life, even though he's stuck behind Jonathan Taylor. It feels like a bigger role than what he would have had for a team that is going to be dependent on the run to be the handcuff, which that is what Zach Moss is now for Jonathan Taylor, because I do believe Zach Moss could do more with the Jonathan Taylor role than Nyheim Hines or Deion Jackson could. So maybe that's wishful thinking on the Zach Moss part, but when I anchor my feelings on him and think about it, I do think he's an upgrade, even though he doesn't know the system as well as the other players I mentioned. But anyway, bigger trades happened. I thought one that I would address before I get into some of the other team ones, because I was all set to talk about the Dolphins in this podcast, and they made a couple of trades. So I thought we'd go, but I want to link that in to the greater game discussion that we're going to have. Sorry to get all meta on you right there. I thought the trade of Calvin Ridley to the Jacksonville Jaguars was interesting. Obviously, he's suspended for the rest of the year, so not going to affect much for either team as far as this year's go, because there's no other players involved. So both teams kind of operate status quo for this year. But it is interesting for next year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So while it'll be a little expensive to have Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, and Christian Kirk signed for that much money, it is something they're locked into with the way the contracts are signed for next year. And then I feel like having Calvin Ridley over the top of those options makes everybody better and will make this offense make sense. Because one of the things I had been thinking about is the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely need to draft a number one wide receiver to put over the top of Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, because I don't think that either one of those guys is suited to a number one role for Christian Kirk and a number two role for Zay Jones. I think they are fantastic number two and number three options. So to put Calvin Ridley over the top of those options, or to draft a guy in the top 10, like I think I was thinking before, I think that makes all the sense in the world. And I think that kind of puts everybody into their place and makes the Jacksonville pass catchers a dynamic unit. Maybe not dynamic to the point of having Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, not by any stretch. And probably not even a poor man's version of that, because none of those guys, even Calvin Ridley at his peak, is Jamar Chase. But still, overall, it does make them a ton stronger. And because Christian Kirk and Zay Jones can't win in every type of matchup, it doesn't really make them a number one. Your number one guy, if he's going to be a true number one wide receiver, needs to be able to win in whatever type of matchup. So if the guy goes up to jam him, he can release and beat that jam coverage. If they play off of it, he needs to be a crisp route runner to beat the guys that are faster than him. He needs to be able to be physical with the smaller guys. I mean, he needs to be able to do all of these different things to beat every type of coverage and every type of guy. And those guys come around not very often. We're talking about the Devontae Adams of the world, right? And he hasn't been playing great, but he is one of those guys who can work in every phase of the game. Tyreek is a little bit more of a speed guy, but the reason that he is so effective is he is complete and well-rounded. And because his speed is so great, he makes up for his lack of physicality, because people don't go up and get physical with Tyreek, because if he releases on them and gets by them, that is a touchdown. And you see with Tyreek, not to get into the Dolphins too quickly, but when you dropped him over the top of Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki, everything fell into place for them. Now, they added other pieces and an offensive coordinator with Mike McDaniel, but still, dropping Tyreek over the top of those options made a ton of difference. And while I don't think that Calvin Ridley is on that same class of wide receiver, I think he's closer to that than he is closer to Zay Jones. So to drop him over the top and drop a proficient route runner who creates a ton of separation with those routes, has plenty of speed, has plenty of go up and get it for a guy of his size, I think he's a great fit for Trevor Lawrence. And while I'd like to see them have had a more like AJ Brown type presence. Who doesn't need an AJ Brown type presence? And those come around so rarely that you can't depend on that. And you didn't have to pay near the price that you paid with Calvin Ridley because the picks are conditional. You're giving up a fifth or sixth round pick, depending on whether he's reinstated to the league, which such a minor infraction, even though it's gambling. With the way gambling is getting mixed into everything with the NFL, I find the odds of him not getting reinstated at the end of the year very minimal. So, okay, you're locked into that part. And then you're going to give up another somewhere between a second and fourth round pick in 2024, depending on playing time, whether they re sign him, etc. So, if things go great and you do want him and want to re sign him, then you give up a second round pick. So, a second and a fifth for Calvin if things go great, fifth and a fourth if they don't. It seems like a worthy gamble for a team like Jacksonville, who has to overpay to bring free agents in at this time. It may not always be that way for Jacksonville, but it's not a premier destination. And even people in Jacksonville know that. But that's okay. With Trevor in tow, with Doug Peterson in tow, they will become more attractive. Now that they've shown a certain level of competence, I know that they're kind of down as far as how they've done so far, but now that they've shown a certain level of confidence, I think that they can get back to where they need to be with this. And Trevor has shown flashes of what he can be, and he has shown progression in his second year. He's still got a long way to go as far as the decision making goes, but he stepped up to the next level, which is impressive in when he was put behind the eight ball last year with everything that he had going on with his coach, with the offense he was put in, with the personnel he had around him. Now he's got Travis Etienne back. Travis looked incredible, by the way. So I want to take a quick victory lap on Travis Etienne because I've been saying for weeks that he looks bursty and he looks like a guy that you'd want to have. So quick victory lap on that. And I think that Calvin, over the top of all that, with the running game, with the rest of those options, can set up Trevor. And that excites me for Jacksonville and excites me for Trevor because I really want good things for him because I think he's not only a quality guy, it seems like, but I think he has the traits to be a franchise guy. So I want to see them continue to nurture that. And like I said, he's still got 3 or 4 levels of Jedi to get to the elite tier for sure, but he's showing signs that he can get there. Not only last year, it was because of his physical skills. Now it's because of some of the throws that he's making. I see flashes of it. He just needs to run a little bit more too. He needs to mix that in there and mix some more of his physicality in there while he's still figuring out the rest of it. The first trade that kind of set off the day, not to go from the last two to the first one, but that's how my brain works today. So that's what we're doing. The Vikings acquired TJ Hockenson and 2 fourth-round picks in exchange for their second-round pick this year and their third-round pick next year. I like TJ Hockenson a lot. I've been calling him the slowest explosive player in the NFL because he makes explosive plays and you can see that he's got a lot of short area burst, but then he doesn't have the same breakaway speed that the wide receivers have, or even like he doesn't even have the Travis Kelce same level of speed. So he gets caught a lot easier than some of the explosive players that you see make chunk plays. So the slowest explosive player is a compliment. And I think that during his time with Detroit, he has been underutilized to a certain degree. They definitely go to him and they definitely treat him as a top option, but they haven't had the talent around him to take advantage of that all the time. Matthew Stafford is one thing, and he was used by Matthew, and that was a good relationship for sure. But still, even when it was Matthew, they were having trouble blocking at times. They had trouble with the wide receivers around him at times and surrounding the whole thing with talent. And that organization was just a mess, basically at all times, whether Matthew Stafford was there or not. And then now you've been dealing with Jared Goff and backups and et cetera. And it's just been a kind of a disservice to what Hawk can bring to the table. Now, I know that anybody that listens to me knows that I hold Kirk Cousins to a certain standard where I think he's the line of demarcation where he's just doesn't have it as far as the processing power to be an elite pocket passer. His decision making is kind of slow for that kind of thing. And thusly, you see a lot of play action. You see a lot of gimmicky type stuff to keep him from having to be one of those guys. And that skill is an increasingly rare skill in the NFL. So I don't hold it against Kirk Cousins for that necessarily, but I do think there's a certain ceiling to his play. Now, I think you could put a team around him that could win a Super Bowl, but it has to be a great team because it can't come down to him having the ball with 2 minutes left and he has to throw the ball down the field and the other team knows it. If he's not able to play within the offense and within the play action, that's when things struggle. Good news is he's about 10 times better than Jared Goff is at anything else. So he's going to be able to deliver the ball out to TJ Hockenson in a situation where there's no way that he can be doubled with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen out on the field. There's just no way that you can give TJ Hockenson that much coverage because you have to cover Justin Jefferson completely or he will destroy you because he is incredible. Even with Kirk, I'd love to see Justin Jefferson with one of the upper tier echelon quarterbacks. We'd be talking about him like we talk about Jamar Chase. If he was with Joe Burrow, maybe even better. I mean, who knows? Justin Jefferson is incredible. So you have to cover him really thoroughly. And to add Hockenson to that mix up the seams does make a lot more dangerous. And I think they took a worthy gamble here, even though you're going to have to dump some money into him coming up. I think his fit could be really great with them. I think he really could bring a lot to their table and give them run after the catch and give them more explosive plays and back teams off and give them another thing to worry about. So, like I said, while I talk a lot of crap about Kirk Cousins and who he is and the like, I think he's a great fit for TJ Hockenson. And the point of all that is that even with all that, he's better than Jared Goff ever thought about being. So I'm excited to see that fit right there. I'm also excited about Chase Claypool to the Chicago Bears. I had watched the Cowboys-Bears game as a part of what I was going to do with the podcast. And one of the conclusions I had come to with Justin Fields is, and this didn't just come last week, but this guy is working with one of the worst offenses in the NFL right now. Like Darnell Mooney, Velus Jones, and Kmet, along with a good running back pair. I like David Montgomery and I like Khalil Herbert a lot, and especially as a running back pair. But to pair them with the offensive line that he's been dealing with to this point is a travesty and a disservice to Justin Fields. And anyone judging Justin Fields' play based on that, I feel like is going to end up being sorely mistaken. Now, it's not good for his development not to have quality wide receivers and quality tight ends and offensive line around him. I guess the tight end is quality. I like Kmet just fine. But to not have quality options for the wide receiver and for the offensive line is not good for Justin. You're not getting a lot figured out running for your life because he needs to develop as a pocket passer and as a decision maker first and foremost. Like he's going to be able to get by on his running, and by all means, he has to run the ball. He has to run the ball and be dynamic doing it for the Bears right now and for him going forward, because he needs to be able to do that to get wins while he's figuring out the rest of it, because he has a decent way to go. He's behind Trevor as far as his decision-making and his anticipatory throwing. He's got a ways to go there, but you can see flashes that he's not without skill throwing the football. He's got a big arm, and when he gets time and when he has open receivers, he hits them. He isn't afraid to throw it up, even with these receivers to guys. And good news, doesn't feel at all jaded by having to play with this personnel either. He fights for everything, even though I've seen people question his demeanor. I don't question that at all. It's just, man, he's not getting a lot of separation out there. Darnell Mooney is not suited to be a number one guy because of his size. He needs to be a complimentary second wide receiver or even third. And then Velus Jones is just now getting in there. And I don't know how good his point of catch skills are. Like, he's really fast, but it's not Tyreek speed. And then when you're that level of fast, you're probably going to have to make some plays with guys up on you tight. And unless it's just right there on him, it just doesn't feel like he's elite at that part of the game yet. And that's like your second guy. You're counting on Equanimous St. Brown for stuff and N'Keal Harry for stuff. And N'Keal Harry caught a touchdown. I mean, come on. This should not be who is around Justin. So to see Chase Claypool fetch a second round pick is kind of surprising, especially for the Bears, who are probably going to have a decent second round pick, right? But I get why they're doing it right here. And I think that Chase Claypool is a worthy gamble for them to get him under the roof, to see how he fits, to give Justin a guy to try and develop with who I think fits his style, because Justin can throw it really deep, really easily. And when he's able to break out of the pocket and then work things to guys downfield, he needs a big guy who can go up and get it. And Claypool is fast and multi-talented. He threw a touchdown last week. I mean, he's got a lot of talent here. I've been lusting after this talent for years. Chase Claypool was my most drafted player, not this year, but last year at wide receiver, because I was getting him super duper late, first of all, but also because I really believe in the talent there. So maybe I end up being wrong on him, but I don't think so, because I see a fleet of foot guy for a guy of his size. It's not, quick, short area speed, quickness and whatnot, but he's got power and strength too. He may be kind of a knucklehead, with the TikToks and whatnot, but he's a young guy. And the Bears needed someone to grow with Justin, because you see it in the Cowboys game that they just don't have the separation, and Justin isn't throwing a lot of guys open at this time in his career. So it's steep for sure, and it's good for the Steelers to get more than they would have gotten for him in the compensatory system later on. But I think it's a worthy gamble, and I think it's smart by the Bears to go this route. And I'm trying to give this regime the benefit of the doubt, because they've showed me good things so far. I'm encouraged by the Bears management so far. I don't love them giving up Roquan Smith, someone that I thought fit their system pretty well. And I feel like Eberflus needs a really good middle linebacker to make his schemes work. But I also think that Roquan Smith wants $20 million, and the Bears weren't willing to pay that for a middle linebacker, which I'm not sure that he would have been worth that. I don't know. I think he's good. I think he's really good. But I think that his demands were a little out there too. So you give up a pick and you've got one coming in. So I don't know that I'd have made the trade like straight up, like trading Chase Claypool for Roquan Smith. They got a little more than just the second round pick for the Ravens too, just for the record. Still, I think it's something that they needed to do for Justin Fields for this season too, for next season. Like, how many times does signing a free agent wide receiver work out for teams? Like Kenny Golladay, good Lord, that is the biggest mess of all messes. I mean, that's how I feel like wide receiver contracts go more that direction than they do the other direction. Typically, you need to draft these guys and re-sign them. And you still have some control on Chase. You get to see him, see how he fits with Justin right now, and see how your team is right now. You need to do some evaluating as far as all the different players you've got. And I think this helps you in a big way get there, because I think we all saw it, especially those of my listeners in Texas here, that he is dangerous. He has something, and it can't be overblown how bad that offensive line is and how bad that skill position group is. And now, just like with the other trades we talked about with Calvin Ridley and Hockenson, I think this puts everybody in a better place as far as their roles in the offense too. So excited for Chicago, excited for Chase Claypool. He's one of my favorites that I've watched on film that just hadn't been getting the love in Pittsburgh with all the different things they have going on with Kenny Pickett, with all the different skill position players they have. So I don't think I think when they signed Deontay Johnson, that was pretty much the death knell for Chase Claypool's time in Pittsburgh. So to recoup a second round pick in this upcoming draft from Chicago makes a lot of sense for them too. So in a season where they weren't going anywhere and they need to figure out Kenny, and they still have plenty of wide receivers to make that happen. And I don't mean to gloss over the Roquan part either. That happened a little earlier than some of the stuff we're going over now. And I think he's a great fit for the Ravens. And I'm super excited for the Ravens, who I have in one of my team pools, because I think that makes them even more formidable on defense. I like Patrick Queen just fine, but I think having him and Patrick Queen out there makes them elite at that level and should help their defense out a lot. So we'll see how that part of it works out. But I love Roquan Smith. It's just, I think he was asking for, quarterback type money. And I guess the Bears just weren't willing to pay that, which is fair. I don't think they're at the point where they can do that with this roster, even though they have a ton of money coming in. So it'll be interesting. They'll be an interesting offseason team. They'll win the offseason because they'll have signed all these different people. But I think it's a worthy move for now, for sure. The other big mover and shaker yesterday was the Miami Dolphins. I'd actually recorded before my internet went out a whole 30-minute segment on the Dolphins versus the Lions. In two separate moves, the Dolphins traded for Bradley Chubb and for Jeff Wilson. Obviously, I think the Bradley Chubb move is a bigger move overall for the Miami Dolphins, the compensation of which was Chase Edmonds, which I thought was interesting, as well as a first-round pick, which is San Francisco's first-round pick, not their own. And then also looks like there's a fourth-round pick. So the compensation, in addition to dealing out a 2025 fifth-round pick, they got Chase Edmonds, a fourth-round pick, and San Francisco's pick, the third fourth-round pick being not this next year, but the next year. And then San Francisco's pick coming up in this next draft. Obviously, the Chase Edmonds part of that is interesting. They'd kind of phased him out for Raheem Mostert after signing Chase in the offseason. I think that's good for Chase to get a new scenery. He didn't really fit the one-cut scheme as well as you might have thought from Mike McDaniel. So good for them for getting off of that contract, even though I'm sure there's a lot of money that they're still going to have to pay there. I think some of the contract details and who's going to pay what hasn't come out on some of this stuff yet, but still worthy gamble for the Broncos as well. But obviously the bigger part of that trade is the draft picks for them. We'll see how Chase Edmonds and Melvin Gordon pair together. They've already come out and said that Melvin is still the starter, and that may be the case for 1 week, but Chase could absolutely weasel his way into that role pretty easily, the way that the Broncos have been messing around with Melvin's playing time at this point. Shout out to anyone else who started Melvin and got the touchdown last week. That took some balls. I did that myself, not to give myself praise on that, but shout out to you if you also did that, because you had to. I had to, so whatever. But obviously I've been kind of skipping over the part where Bradley Chubb is a great fit for the Miami Dolphins. I think the Miami Dolphins front seven has been playing a lot better than I expected. They have players obviously on the back end that help all that, right? With Xavier, Byron Jones, etc. But I felt like the Miami Dolphins were like one really good pass rusher from being a formidable front. They had already been formidable. Adding Melvin Ingram to the mix they already had really worked out. But it's really a group effort with them having really solid guys all the way across the line has been part of their calling card. But to add somebody over the top that should garner a lot of attention makes all of those guys better. And you only had to give up a first and a fourth. You got a fifth back, and you had to give up Chase Edmonds, who you'd kind of given up on already. Seems like a very worthy gamble for a team that, Chubb is young. He's on a good time frame with the rest of their talent. and you're not just trading for a guy that's in the later stages of his career. Bradley should have lots of time left here. And then all of a sudden, Phillips and Ogba and Ingram and everybody, Flowers, etc., Christian Wilkins. I mean, all those guys are seeing single coverage now because everybody is worrying about Bradley Chubb. And the Dolphins have been playing really well and look like, not in my ring of trust for contenders, but look like a dangerous team. And I feel like this, with Tyreek and Jalen, if they can continue their health and Bradley Chubb comes in and brings them more off of the edge than what they were already getting, that this makes them dangerous. So to see them do this and to see them add Jeff Wilson for a 5th round pick when they're sending Chase Edmonds out, you add a guy that you know fits the system with Jeff Wilson in. I think that's a huge boon for them as well. I know that Jeff Wilson isn't a huge name, but he's fast, strong, and we know works in a Shanahan type system. That's a win for Mike McDaniels and the team, especially with Raheem Mostert being so important to what they've been doing recently and to having the injury history that he has. That was a big part of what I had recorded earlier. Raheem Mostert has this injury history, and Tyreek and Jalen are kind of smallish for number 1 and number 2 guys. And Tua has an injury history. And that was a whole big segment about that. So to add a piece, or I guess a couple pieces with Bradley Chubb being able to replace Melvin Ingram if they have to, that's big for them. And that's going to raise their floor and their ceiling at the same time. Plus, I think you can use Jeff down the line. I think you can use Bradley Chubb down the line. So it's not like they mortgaged all of their future to do though. So they had an extra 1st round pick in the first place for dropping down with the Trey Lance thing. So good for them. I love the way that Tua looks right now. I love the way that Mike McDaniel schemes offense. He has a lot of creative ideas to get his best players the ball. And he seems to have an appropriate sense of offense, when to do things, when to push things. And there's not a ton of film out on him yet, but 8 weeks is enough film. So there should be better game plans coming up against him right now. And he's been able to make it work. And granted, Detroit is terrible. I'll give you that. And I know it's probably killing Dan Campbell for them to be as bad as they are, no doubt. But Miami is good. You put Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and a decent running game, Mike Gesicki up the seams, that's a tough cover. You need to be able to swing coverage to Jalen Waddle or to Tyreek Hill, and you can't really do that when you have either one of them on either side, or if you got them both on both sides and you have to worry about that. I mean, there's a lot to worry about here with this team, and Tua is showing off the accuracy. He's showing off the decision making. He's finally coming around with that part of it. And part of what I wanted to talk about was, hey, with Tua, it's not the physical skills. The physical skills are good enough and maybe even plus for parts of it, but they're not plus. So it was always going to be the decision-making part of it and the accuracy portion of it that made him go. And that's going to take a little longer to develop with him than it is some guys, especially when he's coming off that hip injury that he had that killed Bo Jackson's career. Like, it killed Bo Jackson's career right there and then when that happened. And it could have happened to Tua too. Luckily, there's been a lot of medical breakthroughs happened since it happened to Bo. And now he's a couple years away, removed from it. And now he's really caught up with the speed of the game, with the intricacies of playing quarterback. And now he's got a guy that's able to support him and give him the opportunities to use his strengths and succeed. So super exciting to see them double down on what they've got right now in a way that also plays to their future. By the way, you watch that game, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are so good and fast, and they're both really good for speed guys, especially at the point of contact, at the point of catch as well. It's abnormal, and it's cool to see the Dolphins get the Jalen Waddle piece of this right as well, because it wasn't an automatic that he should have been the first wide receiver taken either. So to see them have made that call and got that done is also interesting to me. So count me interested on the Dolphins. I want to see where they go from here. I've got them in my team pool. I need them to make the playoffs so that I don't take a pie to the face like the loser of that bet does. But I was interested before that. I've been on Tua. He's been showing flashes of what he could be. Just like we're seeing flashes from Justin Fields. He can be a deep throwing threat. Plus, you have to worry about his running ability. It worked for Cam Newton. And I think that Justin Fields is about 10 times smarter than Cam Newton. So we're seeing that. And now we're seeing Tua morph into Drew Brees with better agility and better movement and possibly a bigger arm, especially than late stage Drew Brees. So that's been the ceiling. That's what we've been seeing flashes of from Tua. So I'm taking a little victory lap here that I didn't give up on him and that I think he can go beyond that Kirk Cousins tier. Like I saw him make a third down play that Kirk Cousins couldn't sniff it at all. There's no way he could have made those reads. Him, Jared, Mitchell, the guys that just don't have that level of quarterback. Jimmy G's one of them too. Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr. That's the tier that there's something deficient about those guys either. And it's mostly in the decision making and in the upper elite tier quarterback skills that they just don't quite have. And Tua has the ability to advance beyond that. I don't think he has the ability to be John Elway from a skills standpoint, but he has the ability to be something elite if he can just continue on and become this elite level of decision making and quarterback. If he can, look safeties off and keep his footwork right, avoid the big hits, continue to be mobile within the pocket. He has to put all these different things together. And he's showing us not just in snippets right now, he's showing us in phases. First, you want to see flashes, then you want to see phases of it. There's going to be times where somebody throws him something he's not ready for, and it's going to throw him for a loop. But for phases where those type of things aren't happening, you want to see it happening for him. And now we're seeing it here. Obviously, Tyreek has a huge part to do with it. But I think we all have to realize, too, when we're talking about these quarterbacks, that it's not just him either, right? It's a lot of people you could drop into this scenario and have them play really good quarterback. And some people might play a lot better. Like if you drop Josh Allen into the Tua spot right now, I think Josh Allen would play that spot better than Tua, right? I think that Josh Allen would play the Daniel Jones spot a lot better than Daniel Jones. But some guys aren't set up for that. And if you drop Josh Allen into the Houston Texans situation, he wouldn't be as good as he is right now either. And if you dropped rookie Josh Allen into a dysfunctional situation, would he have developed into the guy he is today? I don't think so. Because, well, I think he would have been good. I think that, he's not getting any help Johnny Manziel style and never advances beyond like year 2 Josh Allen, then he's just not the same. There's so many things that have to come together for these guys, and it's often not linear, and it's often not their fault necessarily. For a lot of guys, the league has become so much more dependent on your guy being mobile from the quarterback position. So you can't have the same type guys anymore and have them work. The equation of their mobility versus their ability to pocket pass doesn't equate to winning football anymore. Like that's the reason that Josh Rosen is out of the league. He's not mobile enough, and then his skills on the passing level doesn't make up for that enough. Even like your Justin Herberts, who have John Elway type ability in the passing part of it, even he needs to be able to be mobile to get away from guys and keep the defense honest when it comes to covering him down the field. And then he needs to be able to take advantage of the open field in front of him. Jared Goff isn't able to do that. He's slow enough where he's not only is he a liability as a decision maker, but he's also a liability as far as the mobility part of it too. And that's going to get him played out of the league sooner rather than later, for sure. And finally, a piece of news. I was all set to talk about some of the other games I've watched. I have a big thing about the Cowboys and Dak and Tony Pollard and everything. But something just dropped news-wise while I was looking to see that I had gotten through all of the trades. There was a couple of them that, like the Brandon Cooks didn't happen trade. Cowboys waived Tristan Hill. There was some other stuff. Good riddance to Tristan Hill. Jake Martin was traded. Okay, didn't get to everything, but it was reported by Forbes that Daniel Snyder has hired Bank of America to sell the Washington Commanders today. That is huge news. He has been a pariah. He has been a albatross around the neck of the league for some time. Washington is an insanely strong fan base. They love that team, and slowly but surely, he has eroded all faith, all excitement, all hope in that fan base to the point where, they're not selling tickets the way they should. They're not bringing in ratings the way they should. They're not competing the way they should. They've been the New York Jets of the NFC East for so long. People talk about the Patriots all the time having not strong teams in their division. Well, that has been a big boon to the Cowboys for so long to have so much dysfunction from that organization, not only from a management standpoint on how the team makes its decisions and who gets signed and who gets drafted and everything, but from like a human standpoint too. I mean, there's all the sexual harassment stuff and all the just horrible lawsuit stuff and everything. And to have all that go away is not only huge for that city, for that area, for that franchise, for those players, for the NFL. It's just big for everybody. I mean, you know what? I'd gotten to the point where I love beating up on the Commanders and whatnot from the division standpoint, but I can't stand watching that football anymore. It's not good football. Like it trickles down. You say, okay, it's the owner. What does he have to do with the actual football on the field? It trickles down. He hires the guy that hires the guy that hires the guy. And then he ends up having the decision making over the top on a lot of the big decisions, whether it's making them draft Dwayne Haskins, or I bet he had a huge thing to do with the Carson Wentz. They're running that by him. Okay, we've got this way we can go. We've got this way we can go. What do you think? Daniel saying, oh, unless he's leaving it up to the coaches, unless he's leaving it up to the GMs, which it doesn't seem like he has in the past sometimes, he's making those calls. And if he's not, the guy that he hired is, and when you're a turd, you're probably going to hire another turd. And at some point, Daniel Snyder made some good decisions as far as his life goes because he had enough money to buy the team in the first place. And he's going to make a damn big profit from that. He's going to make a huge profit from that. But he has made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And finally is making a good one. It seemed like he was dug in. I was very skeptical on whether they were going to be able to get this done or not as far as getting him to sell. And someone finally did. So maybe, just maybe, this is hope for the Washington football team. This just happened. Like I'm looking at my clock and, it's telling me I'm already pretty deep into this podcast and I probably don't want to go too crazy much further, into the red here as far as how long I want it to be. But this is huge. This happened as I was recording. I just kind of looked to make sure I hadn't glossed over any trades. And I definitely glossed over the Rashad Fenton trade and the like, but which could be big for the Chiefs. They need another cornerback. And I have the Chiefs in my little player pool I talk about sometimes. So good for them. But still, I think this is bigger than all of that from the macro standpoint. And I think there'll be plenty more come out after this happens. People tend to empty their notebook on players and on people like this when they're finally going away. So hopefully this is the last gasp of Dan Snyder in the NFL and we can get some more function in there. Cause like I said, as much as I love them getting beat up on by the Cowboys time after time, and they'll continue to still get beat by them, no doubt. Right. But still, I'm tired of watching the football, tired of dealing with it from my end. Now that I'm doing this, I have to deal with it and having to watch crappy football team after crappy football team at bad decision after bad decision. When, it's not like they have all bad players. I mean, they have, good, decent personnel. They've done a decent job. It's just some teams win because of their organization and overtime, and some teams win despite their organization and despite their owner. And Washington, since Daniel Snyder has been in charge, has been that situation. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. I know it's not a lot of time spent on the Daniel Snyder thing, but it just literally happened. So those are my thoughts that I'm elated for everyone involved. Please, if you can, give the sponsor a call, Evergreen Power Solutions. Shout out to y'all for believing in me. Shout out to anyone that's been listening to the podcast for up until this point and been supporting me. I can feel you from behind the speaker here and behind my microphone. So stick with me. Download if you haven't already done so. Give me a like if you're on YouTube, maybe even a subscribe if you've gotten to this point. I'm gonna try and get to another podcast this week. I gotta get to the videos now too. I'm behind on everything, so we'll see. Appreciate your time today. Have a great rest of your day.